I talked about it plenty of times in the past, but I adore the Phantasy Star series. Heck, my channel's named after it. They're really fun RPGs, while also being great science fiction narratives with enjoyable gameplay, fantastic music, and very strong character writing. Most of the time. But despite me being an Xbox kid growing up, I actually didn't start with Phantasy Star Online, despite it being one of the most popular entries in the whole series. However, I also had a Nintendo DS when I was pretty young, so instead my starting point with this series was Phantasy Star Zero, a very ambitious game with some impressive 3D models, great character designs, and a combat system that initially looks as deep as a puddle, but just beneath the surface there's a surprisingly vast amount of player expression available. I love this game. However, this game lures you into a trap because while lots of difficulty spikes happen fairly early in the game, this one happens during the tutorial. Those who've played this game probably know exactly what I'm about to talk about, so let's dive on in, shall we? The game begins with us creating our protagonist and entering Dairon City, our hub world for the game, where we have a chance to get acquainted with everything as we end up taking the Hunter's Initiation test. I do want to take a moment to praise the visuals of this game. The 3D models look really nice for a DS, and the 2D character portraits are also, well, they also look nice and get used for most conversations in the game, which I think is a good call. Between this and being able to actually explore the hub world, I honestly think this game holds up better presentation-wise than Phantasy Star Portable on the PSP did. Also, there's no furries in this game, so it's an automatic improvement. And while I'm a sucker for the science fiction setting, I'm not opposed to the space western aesthetic this game has going on. Actually, kind of makes me want to rewatch Trigun.
How does it feel to kill unarmed innocent people like that?
And I have a question for you. Do you feel anything when you burn your garbage?
Nifty answer, sorry I asked.
Anyways, the initiation test has us investigating the Valley King, where we head off to an area known as Garatia Valley. The level is pretty easy as you'd expect for a tutorial. Enemies aren't hitting hard, and defeating them not only gives experience, but clearing out a room supplies you with a treasure chest filled with goodies of varying levels of usefulness. Eventually Kai will say, "You can totally handle this on your own," and leaves you to explore the rest of the level without help. Only to immediately have a space pod dropped on your head not even 20 seconds later.
I know it's a drop pod, but would it really kill them to make it a little bit smoother?
Ignore that cutscene, dear player. I assure you that mysterious girl with pointy ears will not be important to the plot at all. From here, it's simply a matter of continuing through the level until you get to the end of the valley, and I do have to praise this place visually. Sure, it's obviously an upscaled where the 3D models end and the 2D background begins, but on original hardware, you really couldn't tell the difference between what was background and what was just game model. All we gotta do now is get to the end of the level and fight this so-called Valley King, and hey, it's a 1-star quest. How bad could it possibly be? The answer is very bad. We're not even 30 minutes into the game and we're having to take up knighthood's highest calling. But hey, it's the tutorial, it's gotta be pretty easy, right? Yeah, no, not even close. This fight is downright absurd. He can bite you from long range, breathe fireballs across the map, shoot triple shot fireballs, fly in the air and dive bomb you, fly in the air and carpet bomb you, and his fucking walk cycle does damage and stuns you, all while you're fighting alongside Syriza, a brand new party member you haven't battled with before. And he can create lava pools in the arena, his bite attack can stun you, and it's also faster than your attacks, while his hitboxes are awkward. And if you use a sword, God help you, because you have to get right up on top of him with a sword where he stomps around, it's likely to hurt you, and his tail whip becomes basically unreactable and impossible to dodge. And if you picked Hunter, then you might be super sunk because, well, his accuracy is kinda shit. And as a bonus, he has a second phase when he drops to low health, where he'll not only nuke the ground with fireballs, but fly up into the air and perform multiple corkscrew spins so fast that you won't be able to keep track of him and pretty much have to iframe dodge the attacks based off the sound effects, which is really awkward to time because, well, look, the sound effects in this game are actually pretty good, but this is still a DS game, so, you know, surround sound ain't exactly perfect here. Now, I'm not gonna lie, visually this fight is very impressive for the Nintendo DS on a technical level, but it's hitting a wee bit too damn hard for the first boss of the game and is far too complex for it. See, in Worst Difficulty Spikes episode 10, I talked about Phantasy Star Online 2, but briefly mentioned this game, and got a couple of comments mentioning about how Mother Trinity deserved to be the, well, subject of an episode. Now, to be fair, Mother Trinity is far more difficult than Rayburn, but that's a battle with the main villain near the very end of the game. Her difficulty is somewhat earned. This is the tutorial boss of the human story, which the game very explicitly mentions is the best choice for beginners, by the way. So yeah, a fight like Mother Trinity is hard and is a titan of difficulty, but that isn't going to make a difference if I can't get out of the fucking tutorial level. So, how the hell are we supposed to win? Well, there's a few things to keep in mind. First and foremost is your starting class. That matters more than you may think. It's not just a case of, oh, your job classes have different starting sets. No, they also have different loadouts, and there's significantly different stat modifiers depending on your character's race and gender. I'll go into your race a little bit more later on in the video, but a general rule for your character's gender is usually the guys have higher attack and HP, or stats like defense are going to be about the same because armor exists, while girls tend to have higher accuracy and usually higher magic attack or MP available depending on their job class. Despite what the game says about hunters being well-rounded, I found rangers tend to be the best choice for humans because they're higher accuracy and better starting weapons of guns. Guns are very powerful in Phantasy Star Zero, while swords are kinda bad, they have weird timings of their combos and very short range. Guns, meanwhile, have fairly rhythmic attack timings. This isn't to say melee is bad in this game, but if you're going to go for a melee build, you either want something like a spear or energy blades for higher range and often better damage in exchange for a negligible attack speed decrease. Additionally, I personally find certain weapons like the rifle are some of the best starting weapons, and there are some elemental modifiers you can find as well that can be helpful, but it's all going to be up to you. Additionally, you can also learn arts allowing you to cast magic, and the room right before Rayburn always gives you Barta level 2, which is a slightly powered up ice spell that does small damage but will hit Rayburn multiple times and is going to do pretty good against the fight. You'll also want to explore thoroughly, find more gear in the game. It does increase the odds of item drops in your favor depending on story progression, but also different job classes have slightly different item tables they can get a little bit easier. And of course, grinding levels never hurts. I recommend getting to at least level 4. You can also choose to abandon the quest and restart it, which resets enemy spawns and loot drops, but lets you keep your experience and any earned gear you may have acquired, and it will make the run back easier, but that should be an absolute last resort, and I gotta admit, I don't like Kai telling you that is a viable option. Like, it should be a player's main strategy for the fucking tutorial. What is very useful to know is you can use a telepipe that is in your starting inventory to warp back to town and stock up on any healing items or upgrades you may need with the abundance of Meseta you'll earn from your adventures throughout the valley. And you'll definitely want to look into adding some moon atomizers to your palette, as these allow you to revive down party members to half health, which will be helpful for, well, reasons. Lastly, it just comes down to finding a weapon you feel comfortable with using. Personally, I like using the spears the most in this game if I'm going to go for a melee build because they attack fast enough that, well, the slower attack speed on the sword is negligible, the range increase is significant, and their attacks have a bit more natural of a rhythm than some others, which I'll go into a bit more when we talk about actually fighting Rayburn. But still, all this seems kind of absurd for a tutorial, and I did say I love this game, so how did Kid Me get past this guy? Well, that's the neat part. I didn't. And that's because you don't even have to fight this guy as your tutorial boss. Your character's race matters because not only does it impact your stats, it also impacts how the story will go, and it alters future events. Why does Reeve have a boob window? For example, if you pick the Newman, the same race as Cereza, she'll have already been living in Daron City and she recognizes you when you first enter the place.
Hey! What are you doing here?
You know, the more I think about it, the Newman's backstory changes from game to game more than even Apollo Justice, so I'm just going to choose to believe that Chaz and Rika had so many kids after the event of Phantasy Star 4 that it single-handedly created a new subspecies of human. So you have different gear and abilities as you'd expect, but you also go to different starting dungeons, which is really cool. Granted, I'm not a big fan of this swamp, but spike traps aren't poisonous, so it's getting spared the counter for now. However, my favorite of the bunch is the Cass storyline. Cass subscribed to the magic isn't real dumbass mentality, going all in on weaponry and an expanded array of items able to be used in battle. It's pretty awesome, and while we start with Cereza again, we meet under different circumstances, which is pretty cool.
Can you hear me? Guess I'm wasting my time. And I thought I finally had someone to talk to.
This is definitely my favorite of the starting dungeons. The music is pleasant, the visuals are nice, and despite being wintry, they have almost a cozy vibe to them with those lanterns and the warm lighting. And the difficulty is scaled well since you're fighting alongside Syriza, who's more than adequately geared and is good all around, and she's not going to leave you halfway through like Kai does. But as awesome as this all is, we do still have a boss to kill, so let's talk about that monster. So, assuming you're determined to kill Rayburn and get revenge for your 10-year-old self, you're obviously going to want the best weapons and armor you can get, and I recommend adding the Barta spell the game gives you to your palette as a chip damage. Well, it's going to be nice. And for the 2 leftover palette slots, basic healing items and moon atomizers if I have more than one. This is your first time battling alongside Syriza as a human, so her AI is set to act freely, which is a bad idea because her AI, well, it isn't hopelessly stupid, but it's an AI-controlled party member in a fairly complex action RPG that's pushing the DS hardware to its limit. So, as the boss is flying in, use the touchscreen to change her AI to stick close to me. This will allow her to dodge more often and stay alive a lot better. But she'll also still attack, and despite what you may initially think, she's not a useless party member by any means. Her hits do 7 damage on average, which is okay for a mage, and she can cast lightning from a distance for a bit more damage, and also do it from safety. But she's more useful because she's able to heal you for about 50 HP when she sees you get significantly damaged, and 50 HP to heal herself whenever she gets low. So she actually does have some survivability, and she can help keep you alive. Now as for weapon loadout, I'm going to recommend either a rifle or a spear. Handguns can also work well, but the damage likely isn't as good if you don't have an elemental version. Spears meanwhile can attack pretty quickly, being close enough to avoid his bite attacks from a far range and his fireballs, but far enough away to not take damage from his stomps. Rifles meanwhile are harder to come by, but if you pick the Girl Ranger as your starting class, then you get one by default, and you can just kind of shoot Rayburn to death as long as you can dodge roll through his fireballs. And remember that you start with a scape doll in your inventory, which will fully revive you one time after you die, so you do have a slight safety net. As for attacking, you may think spamming the attack button is the way to go for basic combos, but no, that's a terrible idea. To actually perform combos, you need to tap the attack button around the time the animation is ending to continue the combo. There is plenty of leeway to this, but essentially you need to be rhythmic with your attacks instead of just spamming the button, which is good. Additionally, if you have a chance for uninterrupted damage because Rayburn's AI decides to go for a walk, you can opt for charge attacks instead, which are riskier because they can be easily stunned out of them, and they take a bit longer, but they hit much harder than basic attacks do. Just don't have that be your only method of damage, and definitely don't try to stand in front of him and attack him when he's going for a walk, or he will kill you faster than any other attack, hilariously enough. Otherwise, the fight becomes a matter of being patient, getting in attacks when you can, which is pretty par for the course in action RPGs, and also when he gets to phase 2, turn the volume up so you can hear when he's going for his corkscrew attack. Keep a cool head, and you can come away with a win. And that's going to do it for this video. I like talking about Phantasy Star, even if it's in a more negative connotation like it is here, and despite the weirdness, I really did enjoy getting the footage for this video. I'm considering making a boss ranking for Phantasy Star Zero in the future, but if I do, it's probably only going to be a playthrough of one of the stories. Would y'all like to see that? Let me know in the comments, I guess. Anyways, that's going to do it for this video. If you'd like to see more content of varying quality, consider liking, subscribing, and hyping the video, and I'll see you all in the next episode. And you know what? I'm not going to play coy. Next episode, we're going to be covering a Star Fox level because it's currently relevant. And frankly, I've got episodes ready for all 3 Star Fox games because there's only 3 Star Fox games and like 5 remakes of 64. See you guys next time. You know, the sad thing is, despite all its problems, Rayburn is still probably a better designed dragon boss than most of the dragons in Elden Ring.